tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi, Kendra. Thank you so much for joining me on the Joy of Sunflowers. Please introduce yourself a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Kendra. I am the owner of Bravely She Blooms Wellness, and I'll be speaking today about my experience through my miscarriage and my pregnancy after miscarriage, and the journey that led me through all of that. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. I love the name of your business, by the way. I think it's so
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Um,
Brave was the word that I wanted to use, so.
yeah, well, I mean, it takes bravery, doesn't it, to like continue on this journey, especially after loss. It's just, yeah. I mean, I haven't actually gone through the infertility part myself, like long term. So I know that that's really hard too. Like I've spoken to a lot of women and oh, that yes, bravery is definitely part of this journey.
Yeah.
The amount of people I've seen stick themselves with needles, I don't I'm j- I'm in awe. I'm in awe.
Yeah,
I can't.
I didn't have to go into that, but I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
you're with me, like, don't
yeah,
like needles.
yeah. No, no. I would do it though.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like, if you had to do it, you'd find a way, but I'm
Yes.
really I'm really glad that I haven't had to do that because yeah. So all of you women out there who has props to you.
Yes, that's amazing.
Let's get stuck right in and get right at the beginning. So
Okay.
did you always know you wanted to have kids, or was it something that you sort of came to?
Um, I always knew I wanted kids. I didn't have a strong connection to wanting kids until I met my husband. Um, but I always had this feeling, this intuitive feeling that it would be a struggle. Maybe it was like my relationship to my body through puberty, and I was on birth control. So I kind of always had this love-hate relationship with my menstrual cycle, with everything around it. So I always kind of knew there would be a struggle, and I guess I was right. But ultimately, it was my husband who kept telling me he was ready, and that's when I got in the mindset of, okay, let's do this. So
That's so
yeah.
awesome. Like usually, like I mean, for me anyway, it was me going, I want a baby. I want babies. And he's just like, calm down. Like
Uh,
we're
yeah,
21. Like, I want
right.
to have babies too, but just like give me a sec. You know,
I know.
that's so
He,
amazing.
he's started it, and then I don't know, a year or so later, I was like, okay, I really want a baby. And then once we get that feeling, it doesn't go away and it doesn't stop. So he started it, but it was me.
Yeah, no, with my husband, he was just like, yes, I want them. I just don't know if it's the right time. And I'm like, there is no right time. And then we started asking like everyone we knew who had kids. And then he was like, oh yeah, there is no right time.
No.
You just go into it. You just do it.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
So how did that sort of go? So you guys decided he was like, come on, let's do it. And you're just like, yeah, right. So how did that go?
When you start that journey, there's a lot of wonder and dreaminess. And so I didn't take it too seriously. It was about a year into our marriage. I was 27. Um, so we decided it was time to start trying. And, when you're newly doing that, that's like, oh, yeah, maybe let's just see. I didn't even know about ovulation. I didn't know that you couldn't get pregnant every day. It was really bad. So, we started trying. trying, and I had missed like 3 cycles, and it wasn't abnormal because I took birth control for many years and I had gotten off of it a few years prior. But the way I wasn't really shown that you should like ease off of it and take care of your body. So I just stopped cold turkey. And I think that really, that grew into irregular cycles, and that just catapulted all of my symptoms. So I went 3 months without a period. And so, of course, I knew maybe I should go to the doctor because I'm not pregnant, see what's happening. And I had some blood work done. She tested my thyroid, and she discovered that I had low progesterone and an excess of or estrogen dominance. And when you're in the room and I was by myself, and I will forever tell women, do not go alone when you're at any, it's just good to have somebody there. Because once she said low progesterone, and then she said it can cause miscarriage. And after that, I was blank. I couldn't hear her. I was like, okay, this is scary and it's big. So, and she didn't really give me any guidance. She put me on progesterone to balance out my cycle. And it did make it consistent, and it did help a lot. But from there, I had to do all the research and the work to discover that your hormones are extremely correlated with your lifestyle, your stress, your diet, your movement. And so we tried for 16 months. And in that 16 months, I like shifted my whole life. I learned what important sleep, like the quality of sleep, the amount of sleep, water, food, you name it, stress. I learned how to manage stress, which is, it's a lot to do. So I feel like I really shifted my whole life. And at about 11 months of trying, I went to the doctor to kind of, I knew enough at that point. I knew, like, we've been trying for a while. Every doctor says after 12 months, come see us and then we can help, which is so frustrating. So I went, and she kind of laughed at me and said, oh, just relax and forget about it. Keep trying. You're fine. Everything's fine. So I did. And 6 months later, it was 2020. So it was a pandemic. We were at home. And so my lifestyle hadn't been the greatest because we were at home for weeks, and the world, wow. So that's, yeah. So it was July, and we were pregnant, and I think from the minute it happened, like, there was pain. Now that I've had 2 pregnancies, I can say that it was very painful from the start. And it was about 4 or 5 weeks when you're tracking everything, really early when you're pregnant. So it was about 4 or 5 weeks that I had started spotting brown, and that when you look that up on Google, that's not a good thing to look up. Google just not helpful. Just save it for a professional, or but I made an appointment, and the spotting didn't get worse. It didn't get better. It just was there. And I had been used to it through, I had breakthrough bleeding all the time on birth control. My body just rejected it over time. So I get to that first appointment where they were going to do the heartbeat and everything, or not heartbeat, but to see the sac and everything, make sure it was okay. And I had called, it was probably 4 or 5 days where I had said, I'm bleeding, I'm spotting. And they were like, oh, just don't worry. You might be really early. It might be whatever. So I had to just sit there and hope for the best. And 5 or 6 days later, get to my appointment. it was just really abnormal. She brings me in a room and she's very pregnant. And, that's always, looking back, that's always hard too, because that's a trigger. But she had a student in her room with her. And I said, I've been spotting, I have taken progesterone before. This was a different doctor. And I said, would that help this problem? And she laughed at me and said, that's a Band-Aid. They both laughed at me. So, I'm feeling vulnerable, feeling unsafe, I'm feeling scared. And it was there that she mentioned that this could be really early pregnancy, which the whole time I knew how far along I was because I tracked everything. So I wasn't that early, like early enough to not know if, whatever they were trying to find. Or she said it could be ectopic. So that was the first time I heard ectopic. She didn't explain anything. She just literally left it at that and scheduled another appointment. So I think it was that appointment, and then it was like 3 weeks that I had to wait. It was terrible. So it's all kind of a blur, but I don't think the bleeding stopped. It didn't get worse, like I said, but the pain was insane. And it was all on one side. I could feel it. I don't think I slept for like 5 weeks because insomnia and fear, and it was just like this the most terrible dark night of the soul experience that I could have ever. It was like my body was kind of fighting this pregnancy because it just wasn't. I don't know. It was the weirdest experience. So very painful in one spot, and finally, because I had called repeatedly because I'm still bleeding, all this, and I get there. Well, the morning that we were supposed to go, my husband, I'm like, you have to come with me because I just had this feeling, and I had started bleeding very heavily. And so, trauma is something like it keeps you very numb. So you kind of don't know what's happening as it's happening. So I started bleeding really heavily. We go to the doctor. We go in to see just the sac. I think they were looking maybe for a heartbeat. But she had to do a vaginal probe because they couldn't see anything over the belly. And they did that for literally 25 minutes, and it was so painful. And it was just, the environment was just so cold and uncompassionate. And I'm hysterical, like they're sitting there searching for something that they can't find. And they keep saying, oh, well, that might be a mass, that might be a cyst, that might, like, just really unfiltered words. And so after this probing, they literally walk out for, I don't even know, it felt like forever. It was probably 10 minutes. And we're sitting there. I'm hysterical. My husband is like white as paper in the corner. And they come back. There's 4 of them, doctors, nurses. And one, I'll never forget, one nurse was like, why is she crying? And the whole room just looked at her like, just so insensitive and just lack of compassion beyond belief. And in that room, there was a doctor that told me there isn't a viable pregnancy. And I didn't hear it because I'm in shock. I'm devastated, scared. So we left there feeling like, okay, we still don't know anything. They didn't really help us.
Oh.
So it was the most traumatic hospital experience I've ever had. And we got home, and I miscarried at home, comfortably at home, not comfortably, but I started contracting, which was very comparable to my labor and birth with my son. And I miscarried at home. And it's such a bittersweet thing because, like, if you look up ectopic pregnancy, you literally could lose a fallopian tube. You could lose your chances of conceiving go down by so much, so much. To treat it, they use chemotherapy drugs and you could die. So it was like, I, I had the best possible miscarriage and there's some relief, but it's the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. So like, there's so many factors there and that it's so hard to process and just, absolute shock and numb for sure.
And it's kind of I know I understand the weirdness of like saying, oh, I had the best like kind of miscarriage, like because my second miscarriage was really quick, like yeah, again, it sounds really terrible, but I found out I was pregnant about a week later. I started bleeding, and then that was sort of it. Like it just kind of cleared out, and that was it. So that was like great, the best miscarriage.
I know.
It's
And
terrible.
it's so psychologically like, I'm like, what am I saying? But like, it's better than surgery.
Yeah, well, or like
Um,
having to wait like 2 months to
yeah.
pass it, which is what my first one was. So
Mine was probably 3.5 weeks
yeah,
of, I knew because my symptoms were stopping. I just knew that it was ending. And so, yeah, it was probably 3 weeks, and a lot of people don't understand that miscarriage, it can last. Like my miscarriage lasts, the bleeding, the shedding, that was a good while too, the cramping and
yeah,
so.
yeah. I mean, I think my bleeding for my first one was like a month. I was
Uh-huh.
like really crazy. I was like, honey, I'm still bleeding. Like, he's like, are you
Uh-huh.
over this yet? And I'm like, I'm like literally still bleeding. And he was like, so no? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother story, bless him. He's
Yeah.
done really well. Like he's been really supportive, but that doesn't sound very supportive, but in there they have moments. But no, it's so surreal, isn't it? Like, and the way that they don't give you anything to go off. Like they're like, oh yeah, we'll just go home, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh okay, like,
Mhm.
and then I know you said don't Google, but like, what are we supposed to do? Like, all you can do is Google.
Well, and when you have nothing else, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm torturing it. My friends that were older than me and have children, they're like, they tortured you for like a month and a half. They could have helped you so much more. So yeah, Google was all I had really.
Yep. And it's sad. Like a lot of us, like Google becomes our best friend
I
while we're
know
going through
it
this.
does.
Um, I mean, I've heard some pretty horrific things, like where like they call the doctor and the doctor's like, oh yeah, we'll get back to you, and then they don't get back to them for like over 5 hours, and they're bleeding a lot, like they're freaking out, and then
Mhm.
like the next day or the day after, and they're like, so you're gonna do something, like you know,
Mhm.
so
Oh, it's crazy.
yeah, and if we don't laugh about it, we'll cry because it's just so
Oh,
shockingly
yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah, and like I'm always saying to other women, like trauma is, who knows how you're going to handle it as it comes out. And if you laugh, if you cry, if you're angry, like just roll with the emotion because you can't change it by any means.
No, no.
Yeah.
But you said it was a good miscarriage. So, how did it play out in terms of like your mindset and kind of got like going through the bleeding and everything? Because I know that can be so hard because obviously you're waking up every day and it's just constant. What you're wiping it and it's just
Yeah.
that reminder.
Um, yes. So I think physically, it's happening, very painful, everything. but mentally, that's where I was really, really suffering. I work with the public, so therefore I see new people about every hour. I only took 1 day off because that's all I felt like I was like, that was acceptable. So I went back to work way too soon, and every hour people are asking me, do you have kids? Do you want kids? So therefore I'm reliving my trauma literally every hour. And I just got really good at lying and saying I would sway them a different way. But as much as it was really, really hard and painful and terrible and torturous to have to do that every day, I felt like I had a purpose. Like, this is happening to me for a reason. And I kind of had a spiritual awakening and really leaned into something bigger than myself because that's all I had. Because I didn't have a lot of support. You know, your husband can only extend so much compassion, and like until it's like I can't, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I was very isolated, and I didn't have a lot of friends that were reaching out, or they kind of actually went the other way and disowned me because they didn't know how to talk to me. So that was another layer in why I've shifted into this kind of work. But mentally, I knew that that wasn't the end. I knew that I wanted to process through the emotions before I felt like I could do it again, because the second time around it's much different. You lose all that wonder, all that happy free spirit. You know, it's hard, you know. So I feel like I actually just leaned into God way more than I ever had, and trusted that this was a purpose. I am here to teach and help and coach others. So, yeah, I found a new doctor, and she actually, I had missed periods. I thought it was because of stress, because that's kind of like my rhythm if I'm stressed out on this period. And she tested me. I told her all of my symptoms. She tested me. And this was like 4, 5 months after my miscarriage. And she actually told me that I had PCOS. And that was the first time I'd ever heard any of that around me. And I knew my miscarriage was not for just because, you know, I knew it was for a reason. And yeah, so even into my pregnancy with my son, it was hard to accept. Like, it was, you know, I was still healing. So it takes a while to move through those emotions. And I meet women that have had miscarriages like 20 years ago that haven't healed, and they're still struggling. So, you know, these losses are not little, and they're huge, and they can alter our life going forward. And, you know, it's a lot.
Yeah, there's women who can hold on to it for, you know, their whole life. I've had a speaker the other day who said that she still gets contacted by like 50-year-olds who are like, thank you so much for sharing. Like, this has really helped me heal. And, you know, I didn't realize how bad and how painful it was until I heard your story and, you know, looked at you. And I was like, what? Like, 50-year-olds? That's shocking. They haven't dealt with this. And then when you think back, like, you know, 20, 30 years ago, they didn't have the kind of support we have. Like the support we have now, like we've got coaches, we've got groups, we've got meetups, like where you actually go for coffee with people who are going through it. I mean, I wouldn't drink coffee because I don't like coffee. I'd have like a hot chocolate. But you know, so there's all these things now that we can tap into, and even like resources and like websites with loads of stuff on there, like that you can look at. YouTube, I mean, sometimes that can be a bit of a rabbit hole, so be careful if you but that was my best friend because I didn't have anywhere, I didn't know about the Instagram world, so I just looked at YouTube. And I was like,
I
oh,
I think podcasts were my thing. And I like became attached to others that had ectopic pregnancy, because I didn't mention this, but when I had my miscarriage and I was in that room, when they found whatever it was literally like in the beginning of the tube. Like, so it was like it came out and it wasn't stuck, but it was still like there. So I kind of identified with ectopic more than anything. So I would just search like Spotify, like ectopic pregnancy loss, because I didn't know coaches existed. I didn't know,
yeah,
it was only, 2020, but, you know,
yeah.
there's now it's incredible. And I want to be a part of, helping others feel less alone. So,
Yeah, and I think I mean, hey, maybe that's a little silver lining from 2020, because like we could all understand and like hate on 2020, because let's face it, it's that strong emotion, okay? We just hate on 2020, okay? It's ridiculous. Um, but I think we can all kind of see like there's a lot more like women-led businesses that are like supporting women, you know,
oh,
that are really necessary, that we just didn't have that support before 2020. And I think 2020 actually got people active in, oh, I can actually be helpful, I can do this thing, because like we were all stuck at home and so you made
uh-huh.
something with your time. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really beautiful in that way if we start looking at it positively.
Yeah.
But you're right, like, it can really strengthen your faith. Like it definitely strengthened mine.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of time because I was like in a pit for a bit,
Of
but
course.
I'm sure you like
Yeah.
felt, yeah, yeah,
Totally numb for like, it was like 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden it was like, this isn't the end for me. I'm not going to let it be, you know? So, but yeah, definitely, I definitely had my lowest point ever in my life was like, a month after that for sure.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
because it hits you. And I
Yeah.
mean, from all the women I've spoken to, like it seems like, there is a process that we
Mhm.
all go through, and it's different lengths of time for everybody. Um, and depending on whether you're active in it, depends on how
Mhm.
quickly you get through it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not active, you could be that woman in 20 years' time who's like, oh
I
wow, I
know.
haven't actually dealt with this. Or that
Yeah.
woman in 50, at the age of 50,
Mhm.
still dealing with it.
Mhm.
So, we have to kind of be like, wow, we have to say, okay, I need to deal with this. Because if we don't, like, we are going to be paying for that later. Like,
I
and
know.
during our lives too, because holding on to that whole
I
time.
know.
Oh, like when she told
And
me, like, there's women who have been holding on to it for that long. In fact, I think it was 50 years, not 50-year-old. And I was just like, that's awful. Like to hold
Mhm.
that in your body, that's just harsh.
No,
So,
it's incredible.
yeah, how did you go with your pregnancy after loss? Like, how did that sort of become a thing? Because obviously you had your loss, you went,
Mhm.
went to a new doctor. So how did you get from the new doctor to pregnancy after?
Pregnant. So, um, she said you have PCOS, and she was so, oh my goodness, compassionate and supportive, and she was younger and just vibrant. And um, I think I don't remember how she told me I had PCOS, but she brought me back in the office, which I really appreciate, over a phone call. And she's like, okay, so you have PCOS, and here's how we're going to get pregnant. And she gave me like a calendar. And she's like, this is going to take all the fun out of sex, but you're going to get pregnant. So she gave me, I did Clomid for 1 month, and I got pregnant. So I don't know if you're familiar with PCOS, but It's a very complex disorder, and like you have to have certain symptoms to qualify as having it, but how it lives in you can be different. So my thing was that I wasn't ovulating every month correctly or on time or at all. And my blood sugar, that was a big correlation. So the Clomid helped me ovulate, and I got pregnant. And this is the crazy part. She put me on progesterone for 14 weeks, the very thing that they laughed at me for. So, yeah.
Yeah, when you said about progesterone and that they laughed at you, I was like, well, I've heard of women who like took just that, and they got pregnant and they
Yeah.
kept pregnancy. So it actually works. No, it's crazy. Like some of these things that, you get laughed at for.
Yeah.
It's really shocking. Like I found out I have a problem with folic acid. Like my body doesn't like process it properly. And I mean, I know that there's women who have mentioned like to a doctor, like, I think it was the folic acid that killed the baby. And they're like, no, 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 that's got nothing to do with it. But if your body's if you're not processing something, then that's gonna mess up your it's gonna mess with your body. And yeah, like I've heard of women also going on like folic acid free diets, or like very limited folate. So folic acid is like the man-made, and then folate's like natural. So folic acid is what I just can't process it very well at all. And that's what products have added to them. And then folate is natural. So my body still has problem processing it, but it can process a little bit. It can process a little bit folic acid, but it probably shouldn't. So yeah, it's kind of like a weird thing. And obviously all the supplements have folic acid, and so it's like, what do you do? And all these things that everyone's like, oh, you should do this if you're pregnant. It's like, it doesn't work for everybody.
No.
And that's, I think, what's so important to like start, saying and building, that narrative, because the narrative that's out now is like one size fits all. Even with the PCOS, even with PCOS, you said like everyone's different, but like everything I've heard is like, oh, you'll miss periods, you'll skip periods, like it's all period based, and you don't like, there's not much more information that I've been getting, except for like, you can get a mustache or something. I think so.
Yeah.
Beard.
And I had none of those symptoms.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I will say through this experience with medical professionals, a lot of them make decisions and choices on their own preference. And it's something may work, but if they don't agree with it, then they're not going to do it. But that goes to say, if you don't feel aligned with a doctor, don't stick around, because it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
And if you're not being heard, like, don't waste your time. And while you were saying folic acid, I do remember. So it was a month before I got pregnant with my son, and I started researching PCOS like crazy, and I cut out gluten and lost like 17 pounds in 20 days. So, you never know what works, but like my body immediately responded. So PCOS is also, your body is constantly inflamed. So, it's just a trial and error. But the biggest thing with the disorder itself is like, you can't cure it, but you can like minimize the symptoms. And lifestyle. Your lifestyle is so important to kind of hone in and balance. So.
Yeah, I've heard of women like sort of changing the lifestyle to the point where it's like it doesn't exist. So, I mean, I don't know if they've cured it, but it sounds like they've cured it, because they said they don't have any symptoms at all and no problems. So,
Yeah. And if you're with the right supplements and the right diet, I mean, and you can feel it in your body. Once you connect to yourself, I know when I ovulate, my periods are not painful, but the right supplements that can help, oh my goodness, it's like non-existent. It's just something you have, and your risk for miscarriage is 3 times greater, and your risk for ovarian cancer. And so, it's basically constantly being aware of that balance that you need to stay in. So,
Yeah. And a lot of women don't actually know about this. Like I didn't. I
oh,
started this event and I was like, oh, it's not normal to have painful periods. Like it's not normal to like throw up and like feel like your legs are jelly and like be really
yeah.
unwell and have like the worst leg pains. That's not normal for a period. And people are like, no, that's not. I'm like, oh, that was me. Like,
Oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah. Mine was more irritability, moodiness, but also cramping. But I started going to an acupuncturist when I started trying. Thank goodness, it was the best thing I ever did. And she helped regulate a lot of um, the symptoms of like menstruation. So,
I've heard
but
this is,
yeah,
I've heard it's so effective, but I'm just like, needles.
but so the first session, I was like, okay, I hate needles. How can I do this? And she held one up and she's like, one needle, one pediatric needle is 3 of these little, like they don't even equal one pediatric. So they're like tiny. And once you start doing it, it's like this high that you can't, nothing compares to it. And if it hurts, it's like it's penetrating the right spot. Like you learn to be like, okay. And mine was always focused on my liver. She was always cleansing my liver because that's where your hormones like stack up and get really imbalanced. And so it would always hurt when she was triggering the liver. And I'm like, okay, but it's going to help. But yeah, it is kind of scary, but it feels really good.
I like that she went for the comparison method. Like, this is a needle, okay, and these are pretty good, right? You know?
Yeah. She's like, don't worry. I'm sure she has a lot of people that are like, no, but
Oh,
it's very
yeah.
effective. We highly recommend it.
Yeah, apparently you can get like the baby needles. Like they do baby acupuncture, so you can get like baby acupuncture needles
Yeah.
if you're that scared. And I was like, that would be me. I would
Yeah.
be baby ones. And still probably not. Probably not. Um, maybe one
Yeah.
day. If I ever do, I will tell everyone and be like, I did it. It won't even
Yeah.
be like me talking about how great it felt. I'll just be like, haha, yes. Um, so okay, so you did all this cleansing, you did all these things. So then I'm guessing that's sort of where you sort of get pregnant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So within the first month of trying, um, and what she had me do is called an ovulation induction. Basically, you're testing for ovulation and you're timing your sex. Um, and yeah, the next month, she's like, test for pregnancy on this day, and I'll get you on progesterone immediately. And yeah, like it all worked. My pregnancy was absolutely amazing. I couldn't have had a better experience, but I must say, for the first, until I could feel him moving, until I could see the heartbeat, hear it, and know that he was okay, which was like 16 weeks, I was really, really disconnected. And we were like, we wouldn't talk about it because I'm like, I don't, so it's so hard. And once I felt him moving and I knew he was there, like I'm just like, this is amazing. And I fell in love with it. And oh my goodness. But I spent a lot of time in bed in the first trimester. So,
Very sick.
but no, sleepy. It was all sleep. Like
Yeah.
I barely could even survive.
Yeah.
But and I discovered through this process, I discovered how much I love yoga, and they have like fertility yoga. So every time I would feel really stressed out about when I was pregnant with my son, and having to work through the anxious feelings, I would just get on the mat and just like breathe it out, get the energy out, because I knew like my mind had to stay focused on like him. And it's so vulnerable once you go through a loss, and then you're just vulnerable every month, every day, every hour. And so you have to almost disconnect from the outcome and process day by day, like one step at a time.
Yeah, no, it's a hard, yeah, it's a hard process to get through the pregnancy after loss. How was the whole process for you, like getting towards the end and then having the baby? Like how was your mental state, and like how did you sort of keep like, I can do this, you know?
I spent probably the whole pregnancy. I'm a reader, so I was like covered in books everywhere. My husband always makes fun of me. He's like, I have 14 books all the time on me. So um, I focused on the birth, and I focused on some really positive visualizing the outcome, visualizing my birth, visualizing the experience. And one thing I didn't focus too much on was postpartum, which I kind of wish I did. Mine wasn't bad, but there were times where I could have used some encouragement and a little bit more guidance. But the only thing through my pregnancy was, I was so happy and it was fun and joyful and I was huge and I loved food. But when I was in labor and I had to be induced because I wasn't dilating, and the doctor, she's like, we're going to induce you. And I wasn't against it. I was open to however he got to me. That's what I was going to do. And the induction really, really triggered PTSD from my miscarriage. The cramps, and they felt exactly the same. So in that labor, I was great until that point, and I started slipping because it had been like 11 hours, and I was very triggered. And I told my husband, I can't do this. It's reminding me of my miscarriage. And so that was when I decided to do the epidural, and that was the best thing I ever did. So the miscarriages, like, they really, yeah, they're real and aggressive and painful, mentally, physically.
Yeah, and they just don't prepare you for it. Like I had 3 kids before my miscarriage, so I knew when labor started.
Yeah.
And I was just like, are you serious? Are you
Oh.
freaking kidding me? I was like, I'm doing this? What? I'm gonna do this right now? I'm like, this is labor pain. What?
Mhm.
Like,
It
this
is.
happens?
Absolutely.
I was like, but I've lost my baby. There is no baby. I've got a sack. What? Why am I doing this? And yeah, it was about 45 minutes of just, you know, contractions, and then, you know, it
Yep.
was it was pretty gross. But the fact that it happened was just, and I knew it, and it was awful because I was just like, this is ridiculous. But I do feel a bit glad that it happened after I had kids, because I didn't
Yeah.
have what you had, because I knew what I was going through. I knew what was happening, and there was that knowing that this is labor. Now, I don't know what I'm going to be like post, having gone through that and then going through a pregnancy after loss. So hopefully I'll just be like, oh, well, this is exactly like last time, like when I
Yeah.
had like living children, instead of thinking about the miscarriage. But who knows? I mean, the brain is a very strange, interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did you go
And
up?
the hormone.
Oh, sorry.
Whoops, sorry.
So
I was going to say our hormones are going crazy through pregnancy anyway, so it's so easily, you could easily get down a rabbit hole of, anxiety for sure.
yeah, well, the last living child I had, like the last full pregnancy, I started having pregnancy attack, like sorry, I started having anxiety attacks, like proper full-fledged anxiety. I thought I was in labor so many times, and my husband was like, no, you need to just lay down and calm down. And because he's like, I know exactly what it sounds like when you're in labor now. Because it was our third time. He was like, you're not in labor. You don't sound like you're in labor. Go lay down. And I was like, okay. And sure enough, it did calm down. But yeah, I was freaking out. I was having contractions. They were really painful. So freaking. And he was just like, you need to just calm. And then I sort of calmed down. And then, yeah, but it's interesting. Like it manifests physically, that stress that, yeah, it was intense. So I can totally resonate with you and the need to, get the drugs. I had drugs with my first, with the last two, I did it all natural. So if I can do it, if you want to do it.
I do want to do it once. I do. I really do. I think it's possible. It's very possible for sure.
It's full on, but if I could do it, like I said, literally anyone can. I'm terrible with pain. I'm better with it now, but I wasn't.
Birth was like 95% mental for me. And that's what I've always heard, but it's true. Like if you're mentally there and like it's really the focus,
Yeah, definitely. I can totally vouch for that because my first home birth was actually pretty good. My second, I had food poisoning, so that took the focus off of being able to get through the labor and more on the, oh my gosh, I've got food poisoning and I'm terrible, like this is horrible, I'm throwing up, like yeah, it was bad. It was very, very bad. So didn't have a good time. I mean, labor's painful anyway, but that was just worse. So obviously not as bad as going for a miscarriage because yeah, I look, it's a bad experience and I can like vouch that they're both terrible, but obviously losing a baby is way worse than having to deliver with food poisoning. But if anyone has had that unique experience, please message me because I feel like I'm a strange person in a sea of people because I haven't met anyone yet who's done that.
Oh, that is unique.
Yes, very, very unique apparently. So you got the epidural. I'm guessing it made you feel a lot of relief because you said like you're so glad you did it. So how did things go from there?
So I got the epidural and they actually had my mom and my husband were in there with me. They had them leave for the process of getting it. And they came back and my husband's like, you are a different person. You were like, great. Because my body, they said with the epidural, they said I had to get it because I was at 1 centimeter for like weeks before I went into labor, and through like up until the epidural, I was still at 1. So even in being induced, I was like 1 centimeter. So they're like, you need an epidural, your body needs to calm down, or like your body really needs to calm down. And I didn't mention my water broke before I started contractions, and you can only be without water for so long until it's serious. So I think I was nearing, I think it's like 17 hours or something, maybe less.
Well, I know in Australia they give you 24 hours.
Okay.
But they might give you in America.
It was about 12 hours when I was induced, and they said that was necessary. And then when I was had the epidural, it was probably 2 in the afternoon, and I delivered at 4, and it was probably 14, 15 hours in, so I could tell it was necessary. But but yeah, my body just within like an hour, it just opened up and I pushed for 45 minutes. Um, but I did in my preparation for birth and labor, I made a birth plan and they really stuck to it so well. So the room and the feeling and the comfort was so wonderful. And, I learned through this process of like, you can have what you want, you can be comfortable and you can say what you want. So yeah, I had like a dimly lit room and there was like flickering battery operated candles and Jesus music and it was amazing. So, and pushing him was nothing really. It was just mentally going through the dilating. But he was great, perfect, absolutely, the sweetest thing. So
Yeah, it's definitely a whole process, and I think you can make it more comfortable. You can also make it more, I mean, it can be traumatic too. Um, just depends on who you've got sort of there with you and whether you were prepared. I definitely wasn't prepared with my first. That was traumatic in the hospital, and that's why we went for a home birth for the next two, because we'd already done some research into home birthing and we knew that that would be a more calming environment to have a baby. And it really was. It was so nice, and everyone stuck to the plan, and it was really beautiful, and people said it was so beautiful, and I was just like, well, it was still really painful for me, so I don't know what you were talking about with beautiful, but but now I look back and I'm like, no, it actually was really beautiful, especially after my last experience.
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, labor is definitely a whole other experience on top of things, and it can be very traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had labor pains, and then it reminded you, and then epidural.
Mhm.
What was the epidural like?
Well, the guy that gave it to me was kind of aggressive. He like I would breathe hard, like heavy, and he would be like, "Don't move." So it took like 45 minutes, and it was a serious ordeal. And the nurse, I had to like hug her so the part of my back would open up that he needed. But um, it was fine. I think because I was desperate for relief, that it mentally I didn't even experience the pain of it because I
Yeah.
was excited that the relief was coming.
Yeah.
And actually, by the end of delivering my son, the last push, the doctor, no, the nurse, she was like, "Can you feel this?" And she dumped like cold water on me, and I could feel it all. So I actually, it wore off, like, so when he came out, I could feel everything. But I think I needed relief just through the opening.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, it was amazing. And I think I was so focused on having a good experience giving birth because I had such a traumatic one in my miscarriage that I was just like, this needs to be positive. I can't, because that trauma, it affects us and how we make our decisions and going forward. And I just wanted it to be good. So,
Yeah, I think that's a really good focus to have as well. Like,
yeah.
because you're not just focusing on something that's going to happen, you're also like, that's hope as well, because you're like, I'm gonna have this baby. Like, you're not going if, you're going, when I have this baby, I'm gonna deliver it this way. And so you're solidifying it all, you're making plans, so you've got this thing to look forward to and to do. So that's a very healing way, a very healing approach to
Mhm.
pregnancy after loss, because I have yet to do that. I might actually do that, so thank you. So far I've just been kind of like holding on to hope and working really hard to do that and not to freak out, and just kind of
Yeah.
be calm. um
Yeah.
but I've been like getting a lot of Braxton Hicks in a row, and that's similar to what usually happens. So I'm probably going to be on bed rest soon. So that's going to be interesting.
Hopefully not for May.
Well, usually I'm on bed rest for at least a month before the baby's due, and the baby's due on the 20th of June. But sometime, like I think the last one, it was like 3 months of bed rest. So yeah, that would be like in the next sort of few days that I would be going on bed rest. But I've already kind of half been putting myself on rest anyway, because the Braxton Hicks has been a lot, and every time this happens I'm just told sit down, rest. So that's what I've been doing. I've been getting the back pain and like painful things like as I'm getting these Braxton Hicks, and I'm like, well, freaking out a little bit. My husband's like, no, this is normal. This is what happened with all 3 pregnancies. Like he's so the voice of reason. It's really annoying, isn't it? Like when men like tell you things and you're like, yes, that makes sense. Yes, you're logical. Yes, shut up.
My husband, I'll be like serious and having a meltdown and panicking, and he's like making me just cry laughing. He goes to laughter. That's his way to like get me to like calm down.
Yes. I have a great experience. While I was going through my miscarriage, he like came in the room and I'm like ugly crying, like the ugliest cry, like proper ugly movie cry. And I delivered the egg thing, and I just full on like even more ugly, like the best worst actor you like picture them, the best worst actor you've ever watched. That was me crying, right? And I could see it, like he was trying so hard not to laugh, like so hard, like he finds it funny when people cry, like just the way that their face goes, he's like I can't help it, like it just, I'm sorry. Like, but in that moment he was fighting it, and I could feel that. But at the time I couldn't get up off the floor, and I really wanted to get up. Like I was so upset, like I was distraught because I couldn't physically get off the floor and get this thing off of me. And so I noticed that he was trying not to laugh, and then I started laughing. And he was like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, and he's like, you're laughing. Why are you laughing? I'm like, because you're trying so hard not to. And then I managed to actually get up, and it was just because I was laughing that I actually got off the floor. Because if I was still in hysterical crying, I wouldn't have been able to get up, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get up. So I was very grateful to him in that moment. And I told him that. I was like, maybe the whole reason why you laugh when someone cries is so that in this moment you could be the thing that got me up, Yeah. So
totally. It's a good approach.
He was like, this is weird. Like but they're good. They're very supportive. So I say that, but was he supportive? Great.
Yes. Oh my goodness. From the time where it was kind of, there was tension, was actually when we were trying, and it became like a job, and all of the fun was lost, and I was so focused on that. And I didn't notice, like, I didn't, even ask him, like, do you still want this? Is this like, because I could feel the disconnect. And I do think that is correlated with, like, maybe that's why it took longer, because was he where he needed to be, But yeah, through my loss, he was amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, the thing about the timed, sex, like, I mean, they need it sometimes. They just need it,
Yeah.
And if you're like, right,
he needed a doctor to tell him that he needed to do it.
Yeah, it's like, no, you have to wait. Like it's not the right time yet. Like in an hour. Like Bless them.
Yeah.
They try, like, you know.
But he was definitely grossed out by the, like, you know, you have to sit there and wait.
For the perfect timing. Bless him.
Yeah.
What was it like having a rainbow baby? Like after, like, you know, holding the baby and going through motherhood just in the beginning?
I still, like, every day that I look at him, every day that I get with him is like, it's just a much sweeter. Well, I don't know because I didn't experience not having a rainbow baby, but the value and the comfort of an experience that was good meant so much more to me because, you know, every doctor's appointment, everything is so much more anxiety ridden because something could go wrong. And we, you know, when you experience the worst possible thing, you know, you're like, well, it could happen again. But he's just happy, like, oh my goodness, like happy, sweet, perfect, good health. I couldn't ask for a better son for sure. So yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can vouch for the not understanding, like, the value and the miracle, because like I mean, don't get me wrong, I was worried about loss and stuff like that, but it wasn't properly on my radar, you know, and by the time I got to my actual miscarriages, I wasn't worried about it at all.
Yeah.
But with my first child, like, yeah, I had him and I was kind of like more in shock. Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is my baby. Like I'm a mum. What is mum? What is that word? Like how does that work? Like, so I was just like kind of just in shock the whole time. And I didn't really connect to that kind of gratitude and, you know, wow, this is a miracle and everything. Of course, I did like have that moment after birth where I was, oh, thank goodness, this is, you know, that moment of giving birth is over and I've got you in my arms and oh my gosh, you're so precious and this is amazing. But there was so much of that, like, just I look back now and I'm like, I wish I'd been more grateful. I wish I'd been more, you know,
Yeah.
but hindsight.
I think that's what made my postpartum experience much less. Well, I was just happy, honestly. I mean, I had moments of, you know, being crazy, but I like, I feel like in the trying phase, um, and in my successful pregnancy with my son, I feel like I had already morphed into a mother. Like the trying and that I already was mentally preparing my mind that I was a mother, that because that's part of how I spiritually opened myself to receive my son. You know, just like visualizing that. And so, um, but I will say it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be because, you know, I'm first time mother of this baby, because what I went through was so much bigger. Like the mountain was so much bigger of not having him. And I'm like, we can do this. This is fine. We got this. So it's been kind of neat to trust my intuition more with him because I'm like, I'm his mother. He is my son. He was meant for me. And we're going to do it this way, whether that book says that's right or not, you know? So that's been cool to have that experience for sure.
Yeah, and I think as well, like once you spend all that time advocating for yourself, it
Yeah.
really does prepare you to advocate for your child as well. It's definitely something I've learnt to do. Like with my first, I started looking into like health and wellness because I wanted to do the best for my son. But it wasn't until after I had him where I was like learning more about being that kind of advocate. But it's taken time where I'm like, no, I want the care I want. And it took the 2 losses to actually get there to no, you please do what I'm asking you to do. I don't want to get aggressive at you.
I know, but at some point we kind of have to
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, it reaches a point where, you know, it gets it borderlines ridiculous. Like, you know, when someone's not listening to you and you're like, no, I know something's wrong. I know something isn't right. You know, like you knew something wasn't right with your body. And then, you know, that took ages to get your diagnosis of
Uh-huh.
PCOS. And it shouldn't have taken that long. Because as soon as you
No.
said your symptoms, I was like, PCOS, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I
Yeah,
am in the space. So
absolutely. And I had symptoms of PCOS since I was like 15. So yes, it's very clear to me now that is absolutely what it was.
yeah. And I mean, it happens so often, but maybe the doctors just don't like they just don't see it the whole way. So they're not seeing the cycles and the patterns, you know, because a
And
lot of times will change. Huh?
what I've learned with girls now that are like on the verge of thinking about prepping for pregnancy that have PCOS, they're like, oh, I have PCOS, but it doesn't matter until I try. And I'm like, it kind of does matter. Or the experience could be way better if it did matter to you now. So,
So like it matters for your health. Like it's not
oh
like,
my
oh,
goodness.
it's only when I'm trying. It's like, no, it matters for your health all the time. Like it's like my
Yeah.
folic acid thing. Like it's not just when I'm having a baby. Like they're saying it can impact my health my whole life.
Mhm.
So I have
Yeah.
to minimize how much I'm having for my whole life because otherwise, you know, my health is going to deteriorate. So,
Yeah,
you know, we
absolutely.
yeah, I hate it when they say, oh, it's just, you know, it's just aesthetic or it's just, you know, just sort it out when when you want to get
Yeah.
pregnant. Just, you know, just here, have the pill and, you know, it will be fine.
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
So what do you, I mean, did you say you were pregnant now?
No, nope, I want some time. A little more time than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you at now? Are you sort of planning?
Um, I would say, well, I'm starting a business and I'm in school, so that's like my second baby. So I think in my postpartum experience, I could easily see how women could lose themselves into their child. And that was one area that I'm like, I don't want to lose myself in just being a mom, which is the greatest role I'll ever have. So, that's what blossomed my business and school and everything. But we're up in the air about a second, but I think I would want him to experience having a sibling. I think my husband is hesitant due to what we went through. But now that I know so much, it's a little
Yeah.
bit different. So, you know, and I feel like we have the tools, we have the knowledge, I have my voice, so it would be a much different, experience.
Yeah, it's like
So
he's got a little bit of trauma like from
yeah,
the
yeah,
passing.
totally, which is absolutely to be expected, right?
Or a lot of trauma. It might be a lot, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it sounds a little bit like trauma, bless him.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, losing yourself to motherhood. I definitely lost myself in motherhood for the first child and it's taken I mean, it's taken losing to
Yeah,
sort of gain, you know, myself like understand myself better.
yeah,
Um
yeah, and I want to show up for him in my best form, and I think that if he could see me doing what I love, then that would, as he grows, it's like, you know,
yeah.
because, you know, I still want to have a good marriage and a good, life. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your business before we wrap it up and what you do and how you help people.
Yeah. So I'm currently in school. I'm almost done next month. Yay. Um, at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition to become a health coach And I'm taking a advanced course in hormones, so I'll be a integrative hormone coach, hormone health coach. And at the same time, I am also studying to become a bereavement loss doula. So, and that expands my experience from, miscarriage to stillbirth to all of the loss that you can experience, because it changes through pregnancy as you get further along. So my business is Bravely She Blooms Wellness, and I'm primarily on Instagram, and I have a private Facebook group. But I think next month I'm going to start my one-on-one coaching. And I have some freebies that I offer. There's a really awesome 18-page packet for the 2-week wait that I offer for women that go crazy for the 2-week wait, that they're waiting to see if they're pregnant or not. So I made that, and I'm going to soon be offering that as a freebie. So that's really awesome. But yeah, I'm just really want to be there for women that have had miscarriages and that want to try again. And I think I blend like the physical aspects of like movement and lifestyle and food with the spiritual. So, we can do all the things that nourish us, but if we're not connected spiritually or with ourselves, aligned with ourselves, or self-care, self-love, it all goes together for sure. And we're all so unique. So I'll be coaching one-on-one for each individual experience that comes my way for sure.
That's wonderful. We'll definitely be linking all your services down below, and any links to your freebies if you have those ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's such an awesome thing that you're doing, and what you're going to be providing for women is going to be amazing. And so many of us just need that person to talk to and to connect with, so that we can kind of have that knowledge and not have to Google. Have someone else to do it.
Yeah. And I spent at this point probably 3.5 years of research for hormones, for trying, for mentally making it through the waiting. So I've done all the research. I read all the books for years, and I love it. So yeah, I'm like a source for somebody who doesn't want to do all that and that is overwhelmed, doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel like she's in good community. And I definitely find a lot of passion and compassion for that area.
Yeah. I'm guessing you've got like a list of books that are like your favorite ones.
Yes, oh my goodness. Yeah, I have a few little reels, and there's highlights on my Instagram of what I recommend. And and I'm still discovering all kinds of awesome books. So it's like it's just, I'm on fire for it, and always something to learn. So,
well, please send me any links, any books that you love, because I would love to share those with everybody, so that they can have the opportunity to kind of click through and have a read. Resources are always good to have. Is there anything that you'd want to say to anyone who is in the throes of going through infertility, or going through that timed, yes, we can do it now? Is there anything you'd want to sort of say to them?
I would say, don't let the word infertility get you down, because after 12 months, it's considered infertility. And that's a big word. And I feel like it can mentally do a lot more damage than what it actually means. And if you don't feel heard in the medical situation that you've experienced, or the providers, seek help elsewhere. Get creative, go the holistic route, go functional medicine, acupuncture. The resources are endless, and we shouldn't have to feel so alone, and like it shouldn't be such a struggle. And there's nothing wrong with your body. It's just finding the right way to rebalance it and realign. Something is weak in it, and we can easily repair if we, dig deep and listen and learn. And connection is so important. And when it comes to the trying part, I would say what I hear a lot so far, there's like a disconnect that happens between couples. So it goes a little bit into like communicating with your partner, because at a certain point they tap out and kind of go on like cruise control, when we're still like, I'm not done yet. We're not done yet. We're going to do this. Like, motherhood is not an instinct that goes away no matter what, no matter how you mother, it doesn't go away. So I feel like being connected to your partner is the best way, and just being open. And, with friendships and loved ones, not everybody is capable of being a support for you through this time. And you just have to be like okay with it. And it doesn't feel good sometimes, but like there are other people that can help you, that want to help you. And if you're not feeling it in your space, reach out. And, there are plenty of people that would be willing to spend the time and listen to what you need, for sure.
Yeah. And there really are just so many services now that are out there, and one of them hopefully will resonate with you and will be a good fit, because I know not everyone's into the groups idea, and not everyone's into one-on-one, and you go with what's right for you. Like you'll know what's going to work for you when you start sort of searching and looking and working out, okay, what am I ready for? What can I handle? So
yeah. And what can you handle? What are you capable of feeling like is okay? But yeah, it's a journey, and everybody's so unique, and we're unique, but also we are so not alone. Like, so.
yeah. And if you're feeling stuck and like there's just so much going on, there are people like Kendra that you can kind of talk to, who can take out that overwhelm and take out all the noise, and just kind of help you focus in on, what can I do next? What can I focus on next? Because I know that it can get really loud, like, when you've got all these different options, all these different things that you can try, all these different things that you can do. It's like, so much stuff. And you just need it out of the way so you can focus on something. So people like Kendra can actually help you to focus on something, have something that you're aiming towards, so you're not feeling like you're all flighty everywhere.
Yeah. And I would say 2 questions that I would hands down ask every person before we even met would be, what is your stress level like daily? How do you handle stress? And what is your sleep like? How many hours do you get? What is your relationship to sleep? So, the basics, but they're so important.
And often they're neglected, especially when
Yeah.
when you're on this journey and you're trying to do something, and have this, miracle child. It really is, all the self-care kind of goes on the back burner, and we've got to change that, because that is a big part of being able to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me and talking with me and sharing your experience and doing what you do. I'm so excited to hear more about, your services, and like, when you have your freebie, I look forward to having a look at it as well. But thank you so much. And you know, good luck with your studies. I know it's full on, especially when you're parenting.
Yes, but it's all worth it.
It is all worth it. And they can see the hard work. My 7-year-old, he definitely sees it, and he's really into it. He's always interested in like, oh, who did you talk to today, and how is she, and does she have any babies? And it's really cute, bless him. And like if I go, no, she doesn't, he's like, oh, oh no. And I'm like, yeah, she's a bit sad. And he was like, oh, we'll pray for her.
Oh, yes, things like that. Yeah.
It's
Sure.
really beautiful. So your kids see your work, definitely. And as time progresses, they'll start saying really cute things that make you like,
And that's just like, okay, I'm so glad I'm doing it.
but yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and please enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll talk again soon, hopefully, on the lives.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.